Aloha, and this is The Art of Life. I'm your host, Willow Chang. We broadcast live every Friday from 2 to 3. One of these days I'm going to remember that it's camera 2 that's focusing on me. But the show really is not about me. The show is always about my guest. And today I am so thrilled to have a guest who came in and said, yes, I can be on your show. And I'm hoping that I can say his name properly because I see it more than I hear it. David Tveraas?
That's correct.
Oh my God, give me a confetti drop. I'm so thrilled to have you here today. You are an artist that works in many different mediums at different capacities. Certain people may know what you do, but we'll just throw a few things out there to tease them. Fire artist, cosplay, costume designer, visionaire, if I may say so.
Yes, thank you.
A man who wears fangs and eye patches and armors and all those good things. What's
Right.
not to like?
A man of many talents.
And in addition to that, someone who survived the experience of serving in our military.
Yes, I was in the Air Force for 7 years.
Amazing. So we will have lots of really interesting things to talk about. So thank you for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
I wanted to start off at the beginning because that's where it always seems to be a just place to start.
Of
so
course.
you're, as we like to say in the realm of comic book worlds, your origin stories. We want to know where you came from, what zygote, what egg, what nest did you hatch from, what floats your boat, how did you get to Hawaii, all that good stuff. Just take it away from there.
Well, once upon a time in a far away lands of Vermont, that's where my parents settled, and I grew up on a farm there. Basically, very simple, salt of the earth type of life throughout, all the way to my high school career. Actually, the farm was a little unique. We had pheasants and quail, not like cows or chickens, that sort of thing. Yeah, after that, I sort of had a passion to try to help out other people and that sort of thing. And I didn't exactly know how to do that. When you're young, you don't know what to do with your life. I thought maybe military would be a good choice. The original plan was to become a weather officer in the Air Force. I did my research, and everyone seemed to think that they were the smartest. I didn't say that. I was saying other people were saying that. So I initially was studying meteorology, and around that time 9/11 occurred, and I remember that exact moment. I was walking through the common area, and everyone was just like staring at the television like zombies. I didn't know what was going on. I haven't heard yet, and they were watching the planes crash into the towers. And the thing that really shocked me was everyone's reaction. They were just staring, and I wanted to be active. I wanted to be kinetic. I didn't know what was going on. First thing I did, while everyone was just staring and watching the TV, I was like, I'll check this out later. I'm sure this will be recorded. Drove straight across the state to Burlington, where the recruiter's office was, and I was like, I don't want to wait. I'm enlisting right now. And that's how I ended up in Hawaii, actually, is a year later, finished my tech school, first duty station, right here at Hickam on Oahu. So that was my first taste of island life. Very different experience than my current one. Through 2003 to 2010, I was an electronic system security analyst, which means, and nobody has any clue what that means. It means that I was a wiretapper. I listened to people's phone calls, I read their emails, but I was Air Force, so I explicitly only did that within the Air Force's base. I didn't do that to civilians. That's the NSA's purview to do it on that side. But I did a very similar job, and after I got out, I know a lot of people decide to either be a contractor or work with the NSA. And I was considering that for a while, but there was just so many moral dilemmas with those actions and that sort of thing. I don't feel that there was a problem with me doing it with the Air Force, because we made it very clear. We even put stickers on every single system and every single telephone that the use of this system is consent to monitoring. And all these telecommunication issues are hot button issues right now in the news and that sort of thing. But I got out intending to study computer science. I got my degree in that. And then I decided, I don't like this at all. What am I doing with my life? My entire first part of my adult life, I thought I was a science guy, 100%.
Yeah.
Just numbers, just mathematics and logic, and that's still me. But I had never explored my artistic side. So when I got out, I was like, now's time to have fun.
You went from Spock to Kirk.
Spock to Kirk. That's right. That's right. And it's difficult finding the balance, but I think that's where I'm going to be happiest is when I'm Spock and Kirk at the same time, which you know.
You get to use your brain and score the ladies.
Exactly. You know, Spock could have had some game if he was just to loosen up a little bit. I'm sure.
It's all about the eyebrows.
Yes. And the ears, of course, and the ears. Well, mine aren't pointy enough, but we can always change that. I'm a
There's
cosplayer,
surgery for
so
that.
there's surgery for. Yes, I've seen that. The elf ears. The elf ears. Yeah. That's interesting. That's very interesting. Lots of modifications out there nowadays, which are just mind blowing and fascinating. But yeah, I think the first real experience with art was Nocturna's Miss Vamp. I saw that, the very first one, and it blew my mind, and I was like, I want to get involved with this crowd. And so when I heard they were doing a Count Dracula, a male version of the darkness pageant, or however she, I don't remember her exact description of what the Miss Vamp and Count Drac are, but I think something along those lines. I had to get in on that. And that was my first experience with costumes too, like dressing up. I was always fascinated by fantasy and that sort of thing. And it was a great experience. It was loosely along the same lines as a sort of like a beauty pageant where there's talents and other events. But it was showing your darkness. It wasn't about cultural expectations. It was about your own interpretation of fantasy and darkness and vampire and yourself. And that opened a lot of doors for me. I realized that I didn't actually have any really what I saw as an interesting talent, so I went and explored and tried to figure out what could I learn to do. I was a student at Hawaii Pacific University at the time, studying information systems. Still stuck in that science side, which trying to find that balance again. And I happened to find someone who was a great contact juggler. That's where you have the crystal balls and you roll them around your body. And Billy Ballou, that's right.
My goodness.
Who's my roommate, by the way.
Wow.
We've been living together for a couple years now, and he was exceptionally talented, and he showed me this whole circus community where there's acrobats and all types of aerialists, strong men, strong women, dancers of all types,
right.
And one person. Edwin Bond showed me how to breathe fire, and then I became fascinated with fire. I just started breathing fire, and then I found some other art forms with fire eating that Billy and I both got into, and he took initiative of that. Okay, Billy Ballou, he's a jack of all trades. If he puts his mind to something, he can learn anything in a week. I am so jealous of this guy. Any talent, he just tries and it happens. It takes me a long time to learn something. But him and his juggling partner, because he does traditional juggling too, and that's actually his bread and butter of his. He's a real entertainer too. So he, as opposed to me, I'm more of an enthusiast. Yeah. Well, I'm sure I entertain anybody who actually sees my show, but I'm getting ahead of myself here. Where was I? Billy.
You were talking about Billy.
I was talking about Billy. I lose myself all the time. You see how many things going on in my head? This is the problem
It's
with being
good.
Spock and Kirk at the same time,
I'm
is
still
you hear
with
them
you,
arguing.
man. That's great.
Okay, excellent. And I was introduced to that whole community with the circus arts and all that.
Right.
And then I combined the whole alternative community here in Chinatown with learning those arts, and I was bringing what I learned to Chinatown and started doing events here at nightclubs, which it's a great experience. It's very difficult to practice a lot of the fire things I do.
Yeah.
Actually, I like to separate my act into three different disciplines, three just separate fire disciplines. There's fire breathing, which is the larger more apparently explosive. There's no explosions. Spurts out of my mouth. And that's a totally separate discipline from fire eating, which is simply controlling air in your flames in your mouth and that sort of thing. There's a couple techniques, human candle. I think we'll have some pictures later on. And my other art is fire fleshing, which it's setting yourself on fire, like right on your skin.
Are these like these freaky little monkeys, like the trend where people put themselves on fire and then they try
yes,
to
I've heard of this.
It's kind of a
you know how they do the is that people do the challenges.
Right.
And one of the challenges, some positive challenges, people do the ice bucket challenge, but there's also those not so smart challenges, the one where they're just setting themselves on fire by putting like isopropyl alcohol and lighting it. Leave it to the professionals, kids, please. It's
dangerous.
It's dangerous. It's very dangerous. Like I do it in like an artistic, like I do what's called transfers. Well, I'll set one part of my body on fire to ignite something on the other side, or that sort of thing. Yeah, just something like that. Don't be an amateur doing it. Like if you want to get serious into it, get someone who can instruct you. And it's fire's fire. It hurts you. Like that's like a primal fear for a lot of people. I mean, some people, there's pyromaniacs out there, but you can hurt yourself, and that's serious injury to life and limbs. So don't do it unless you're a trained professional, of course, and then you know how to do it.
What he said.
Yes.
Possibly not wearing flame retardant materials, and also having a fire extinguisher in hand. Those
yes.
are basic
yes.
things.
Take all the precautions.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Goodness gracious. So you were in these venues. I'm curious about when you have fire performances. Certainly I've seen some of them, but you had mentioned it's difficult to practice. But I would add to that, it's difficult to perform with fire because there's so many establishments that simply won't allow it. And I say that I dance sometimes with the shamadan, which is a candelabra, and this is something that's deemed traditional in the Middle East for weddings and what have you. And, everyone's excited to see it, and someone will say, nope, no open flame, can't do it.
Oh, many places, yeah.
So how do you get around that? Or I guess you just figure out which establishments are fire friendly.
It comes to that because that's my art. It's just fire. So if fire's a no-go, my performances are a no-go. It's unfortunate for me, but that's just the nature of the chosen talent that I took. So
it's a real shame because I think if anyone out there has not seen fire, whether that's someone night dancing and fire dancing or with the boy with the poi balls, or shamadan, or I mean, there's many. Those like Edward Scissorhand. I'm sure there's a name for that. These fire.
Oh yeah, so many different apparatuses, like tools. Yeah.
It's very compelling. I mean, I think people think, oh well, it must be just fun for the person doing it, but it's equally, I think, is enticing and exciting for the audience. And I think something that I wasn't aware of is that the sound that it makes.
Yes.
There's a sound that when you're swinging those the poi balls around with the flames or whatnot, it's not just the sound of that chain, but it's the sound of
the flame consuming the oxygen. Yeah.
It is an amazing experience. I had no idea. I mean, it reminds me of when we had Ernie Provencher here, who was a bassist, and he's playing the bass, and you can feel the bass reverberating and resonating within your own body. I mean, flame and fire has that same very kinesthetic kind of feeling. It's an experience. It's not something that's just visual. It really brings together a lot of your senses in that realm watching it.
And the audience that's close enough can feel it too. That's one of my favorite things, when I'm on fire and the audience is backing away, Then they realize, they're like, oh, okay, that is interesting.
I'm always curious, did you have any naysayers, or did you have, someone said, oh, please, son, don't do this thing, sometimes
kind of.
They motivate us in weird ways.
My parents always directed me more towards the science, technical side of things. They didn't tell me stay away from art. In fact, my parents were very, my father's very musical. He plays guitar and banjo and makes a bunch of songs. He actually wrote a song for Ducks Unlimited, which he called the Duck Song, which teaches children every type of duck there is.
Wow.
And my mother is into arts, performing arts and visual arts and all types of things, but that's what she did in college, and I don't think she ever really it ever really came to fruition, which might have been translated to me a little bit.
Yeah.
That maybe you should have done something more technical, that kind of thing. Which I don't regret my education. I mean, computer science. I mean, that's very marketable, and I have like specializations in telecommunications, and that's so topical right now. But I really just, as a human being, just need to experience the art side of myself and explore that world.
I'm so glad. We've got a fantastic slideshow that we're going to see after this break. So stay tuned so you can see the visual aspect of David, Man of Flames. Woo! We'll be back.
Hi, I'm Jay Fidel. I'm one of the 20 hosts at ThinkTech Talks, and we have 20 shows, 4 every afternoon. One of the shows that I host is Agritech in the Islands. We cover agriculture, aquaculture, aquaponics, hydroponics, you name it, everything around agriculture. We want to show you what's going on all over the state in agriculture. Come and watch, 4 to 5 p.m. on Mondays. I'm Jay Fidel here at ThinkTech Talks. Aloha.
Happy New Year! Oh, you're not in on the joke. They count us into this. They say 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. This is the art of life. Always a little unpredictable, hopefully always entertaining, and always done with the intent of keeping it Pono. I'm your host, Willow Chang Alion, and we have David, let's see, second time's a charm, Tveraas. Did I say it right? I kind of made you sound Portuguese there, I think.
It's fine. I normally say Tveraas.
Tveraas,
Yes.
that's air. I'm going to think of air,
Yes,
because
air.
air is essential for fire.
That's true.
Okay, so David Tveraas, who does many different things, and some of those things we're actually going to cut away and look at the pictures he provided us, because that
Right.
says 1,000 things, as the Chinese say. I think it's 1,000. The picture says 1,000 words.
Yeah,
1,000
that's a
things.
saying.
Yeah. Okay. Woo! This man is on fire. This man is on fire. Look at that.
That's called the human candle. That's a very good one with a lot of nice color there. That's why I love that photo.
It is. You know, a lot of times when people do nighttime photography, it's such a wash. They don't know what
Oh,
they're
absolutely.
doing,
It's
and they
very
use a
difficult.
flash, and it's
Very
like,
difficult
what
to
the
shoot
heck?
fire. You got to do it right, which
Yeah.
it's great that I have these great photographers following me. I've got like Joe Marquez, Jeff Cox, like a lot of great photographers out there. That's my chest is actually on fire. You can if you see a lot of movies, when someone's on fire, you can see through it and see the cloth that's on fire. If you look at that picture, you can see that that's just my bare skin.
And you thought we were looking at your chest on fire? I'm sure our male viewers are like, forget the dude, look at the lady.
Yeah, well, no,
My goodness, what is this? You're like a fire geyser.
Yes, that's me doing a very short inside fire breathing. And now we're switching over to some of my vampire cosplay modeling here.
You can be very ferocious when need be, my friend.
Oh yes.
Wow.
It's just different takes on the vampire myth. This one's more barbaric. That was actually a little bit inspired by Game of Thrones. I have some marks that Khal Drogo has from that series.
Wow.
And this was actually an action shot. I was on stage, and this was a fight scene. He actually whipped me with that. So.
I was just here an hour ago, St. Andrew's Cathedral.
Yes, a
Hail
beautiful
the Queen.
sight.
Yes.
And here's some of my Game of Thrones cosplay. This is a David Tveraas production.
That is just beautiful. I know when those hit Facebook, I'm like, dying. They're just amazing. Every person dreams of a man in armor.
That's right.
Yeah. And then here we've got some around the railway here.
Yes, this was someone else's, I believe,
Cody.
Tracy Chan.
Tracy, yeah.
Put this together. Some of the other artists and a lot of steampunk. They're trying to put together a large steampunk community here, and I think they're succeeding because it's such a fascinating genre.
And let's explain that. I mean, you and I know what it is, but our viewers might be this steampunk thing. What is it? So, borrowing motifs and images from late Victorian period, or is there a specific window?
A lot of people like to break it up into a lot of sub-genres, but in general, most people just say, like, if Victorian just kept on going and we kept on steam power and that sort of thing.
Like Jules Verne.
Right, think Jules Verne. A lot of people just say Wild Wild West, which I'm not sure why they use that as an example. I'm not sure everyone saw that. But yeah, think Jules Verne. That's what I would say. That's a better one.
something that's old-timey, we're thinking clock gears. That's probably the most
Yes.
distinguishable motif people think of are the gears of the clock.
Pre-industrial type of, yeah, yeah. But and a lot of people go fantasy with it. Just like that neo-Victorian era with any type of fantasy added on top. Kind of works out.
I like it. There's a lot of it's where creativity and elegance really and fantasy intercede and intersect.
Right, and someone would badger me a little bit if I didn't mention that cyberpunk was sort of a precursor to steampunk, and there is some crossover in the evolution of the genres.
I'm not sure if this is a rightful analogy, but it makes me kind of think of art movements like Art Nouveau and Art Deco.
Yes.
One preceded the other. So your Art Nouveau movement, which was probably more similar to the time period of your steampunk, where you have this relationship with curvilinear shapes and natural things and things that are organic, and that celebration of that. So we're simply just beautiful. And then Art Deco, which is really the celebration of the industrial era and travel and industry and things that are very clean and a different type of use of the line. But they're both beautiful. And it's like, how can you choose? Some people are one camp or the other, and I think that they complement each other in different ways, even though they're very specific.
They can both be good. I mean, they don't supersede each other. They're just branch off, and they add more. It creates more beauty in the world to have more genres and more. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So, having said that and expressed that, for you, it doesn't seem like it would be strange to shift genres from being in armor or being in eye patches or doing these things. But for some people, they might have a hard time making that jump. Or do you ever get static from people who say, well, what are you? Are you a fire person, or are you a cosplay person? Or are you into like armor, or are you into vampires? Like, dude, you're confusing me. Do you get that? Or
I don't think I have enough fans yet, but I'm sure the show might change that to have enough people to be to troll me that way and say like, well, what are you doing? But a lot of cosplayers do a lot of different genres. I know a lot of cosplayers here and worldwide do like superheroes or anime characters. I think that the term actually came from, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, viewers, the more Japanese dressing up as doing like their mangas or anime kind of characters. I mean, cosplay, it's a simple costume play, but I mean, people throughout the whole world have always been dressing up as characters they like from like fiction or anything like that. There's like old like black and white photos of people doing that, dressing up as like Tolkien characters or something like that.
I was a Rocky Horror Picture Show person.
Yes, that whole movie's a cosplay.
I know. I remember going to an old creation convention that was like, I guess, kind of a precursor before Comic-Con, but going to the Ilukai Hotel and dressing up as Columbia, and I was, I can guarantee I was the only Rocky Horror Picture Show person there. I mean, there were like Spider-Man and Captain Americas and what have you, but just trying to like give a shout out. I mean, when I look at it now, what it's grown into, and it's an industry into itself. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry when you look at Comic-Con and cosplay and all of these things, which has pros. I don't know if they're necessarily cons, but I would have never in my wildest nerdiest dreams have thought 25 or 30 years ago that it would mushroom into this global phenomenon, which it has, which I think is great. I think people need to have that gasket released and to channel their creativity and their fantasy into something tangible, like costume play. And
now it's not really alternative culture either. It's like mainstream at this point, like a lot of people go to like Dragon Con or Comic Con, and here we got like Qui-Con here, and it's just a lot of people just attend, and people are fascinated and just want to see more,
Indeed. We like it. So I want to ask you a few questions that maybe our viewers might have. Tell us about the armor. I mean, is it heavy?
Well, that particular set of armor that I picked up was It was crafted. I don't know if it was by officially sanctioned or anything like this, but it's they advertised it as SCA Armor, which is the Society for Creative Anachronism. Yes, yes. There's a presence on the island. I haven't done anything with them yet, but I do plan to because of my Game of Thrones series of shoots. I'd love to get them in on that, and I mean that's just a fascinating group. They reenact like actual battle or have their own battles, or I'm not an expert, but they dress up too.
Yeah.
And so that's actionable set of armor that's designed to receive impact, not necessarily deadly impact, but you know, for sport.
Chainmail underneath?
I do plan to get that. Yes,
Yeah.
I have to add piece by piece. You know, if I was a millionaire, I'd just blow all my money and buy a bunch of stuff. But you know, some of the stuff I want to craft too. Actually, I'm running into problems with that armor because it's real stainless steel.
Oh.
So the humidity here rusts so bad. I have so much upkeep. You know, it's not easy being a knight in shining armor, you know?
No, it isn't. It isn't. I hear you. Do you go through phases? You know, like you said that you started. I'm surprised that this is kind of fairly recent because 2010 wasn't that long ago.
No.
Although it feels like a long time ago. Do you go through different phases where you just say, I'm gonna like not into that, I'm into this now?
Sometimes I move on. I mean, it depends what other people are doing too. Like the Game of Thrones shoot, that was my production. I just love the TV series Game of Thrones. I like Song of Fire and Ice too, but it was the TV series that got me like, wow, this is a fun concept. I can grab a whole bunch of other people and put one together.
Right.
But a lot of times I just ride the wave, like see what other people are doing, like that steampunk one. That was other people's production. I just showed up because, you know, why not help them out and get good pictures of me and see what they're doing. And it's just a great community. There's so many great communities here, and a lot of them cross. You have the cosplay community, circus arts community. There's the Fire Jam community. I know the belly dancers have a very large community here. There's a lot of crossover, which I love that about Hawaii and Oahu, and just I think that's the most important part in creating and developing our arts is to not just focus just on just the individual art, which is important, of course, because without it, then we have nothing. But to help each other grow strong and be inspired by each other.
Indeed.
Yeah, I mean that's how I would have not had anything if it wasn't for these communities. So.
I'm going to ask kind of like a out there question,
Mm-hmm.
because I do that sometimes. You've had a life where you've been in the civilian realm,
Yes.
you've been in the service, and then you've returned back to being just Joe Civilian, if there's even such a thing. What do you think are I mean, clearly there's a very different regimented lifestyle when someone is in the service or you're on base.
Yes.
It's a very, very different world. But is it necessary to maintain those separate worlds, or do you think there would be more to benefit by both sides if there was more influx and interaction between the two? Sometimes it seems very segregated. It seems very like there's like a little apartheid, whether it's intentional or not.
Well, there's some reasons for that. I mean, some people do cross over, but and you know, some of those people are just some really good friends of mine. I know a lot of military people are asked to do like Count Dracula and that sort of thing, but sometimes they just don't have the time. They have to be ready to deploy. I mean, there's a lot of things asked of them. They also, I'm referring to military people in particular, although this applies some to people that are in very strong regimented scientific institutions or something like that. There's just a sort of an appearance you have to keep up. There's part of these subculture you kind of see yourself in, and sometimes the barriers are imaginary, and like you might be allowed to go and do a bunch of art, and you just have this perception that you'll be looked at differently by your peers. And I think this goes for the other way too. There's people stuck in an art community that might even have technical or scientific aspirations and feel like they might even be betraying their more artistic side if they were to cross over. But I do think that if we can find a happy medium, that'll get every aspect of whatever someone's individual aspirations are. Which, you know, it's hard to say that when you're talking about communities, because then we have individuals within the communities, and it's like, well, what do you want to do, you know?
What do you said?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to just ask a few other questions, you know, just things that come to mind. for people who are uninitiated in the realm of like going to see the Count Dracula pageant, and for those of you who want to learn more about it, this is a shameless plug. We do have DJ Nocturna. She was our guest last year in October, right around Halloween. So if you scroll down on the Art of Life page on Facebook, you can find that and find it from the source. What was the inspiration for that? But I digress. Count Dracula, or Game of Thrones, or things that you talk about that celebrate things that are dark. People who maybe are unaware of that, it might make them nervous. It might make them hit the panic button. They think like, oh, well, I'm a good person, and how can I like be involved in these things? Or is this guy into like devil worship? Is my black dog safe?
Maybe.
What's the draw or the call for you to the things that are dark? I think of it as a romantic thing personally, because I've had my lifelong foray into things that are gothic and dark, and I find that it's just the duality is so much of the yin and the yang of life that you have to have one. They complement each other. It doesn't have to be killing small babies. No one's going to condone that, but there's nothing wrong with howling at the moon or enjoying the shadow side, and the shadow side really reveals a lot about the self as well.
Yes.
What motivates you?
No, I actually agree with a lot of what you just said. There's the whole romantic side to the darkness, and it's about freedom of expression. There's a lot of things that people express, and they express it in different ways. And to some people, just butterflies and rainbows is plenty enough. I mean, we're in Hawaii. I mean, that's what we get a lot. Not necessarily butterflies, but lots of the rainbow imagery.
Yeah.
It's even on our driver's license, the rainbow. And it's just the bright, shiny, vibrant colors, that kind of thing. But darkness can have its symbolism. There's sort of there's a whole bunch of different cultures that have, for instance, the vampire myth,
Right.
or other myths about creatures in the dark. And I think it's more about conquering fears than it is about making people afraid. It's about showing that, hey, we're going to the shadows, and we're bringing our own personal light here. It is sort of a celebration of conquering fear and understanding
Let's go to our last
why we fear things, that sort of thing. Yeah.
You just can't top that. That makes it a great chance for us to go for our third break. So stay tuned. We do have part 3. This is the Art of Life, keeping it bright and dark.
Aloha, hello. My name is Hong Jiang, and I host ThinkTech Asia every Tuesday afternoon at 4 p.m. At our show, we talk about issues that are important in Asia, such as environment, culture, history, religion. We broadcast live, and we're also on Olalo 54. Make sure to tune in, and we'll see you there. Thank you. Goodbye.
It was a very short break as promised. This is the Art of Life. I am your host, Willow Chang Leon, and as said before, we broadcast live every Friday from 2 to 3 p.m. The best laid plans of mice and men often go astray, as John Steinbeck wrote, and I just had this recollection that I was hoping to have some kind of fete here in the studio to celebrate 1 year. It's been a whole year that the Art of Life has been on air. So
right.
I'm so glad to have you on the show
On the
today,
anniversary.
David.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was thinking like
Congratulations.
balloons, confetti drop, but then all I managed to remember is to bring my water for my cup. So these things happen. When right before we cut away for the break, we were talking about the significance of the draw, the pull to the shadow, and pardon me, and what that holds for you. And I started thinking, well, it makes perfect sense that you would be drawn also to the fire, because
Yes.
the fire is about bringing light. And if you look into like the Promethean hero and that
Oh, absolutely.
idea of what fire represents, which is knowledge, does any of that play into the pursuit of fire and performance and all of those elements for you?
Absolutely. Serendipitous you came across that. My stage name is actually Seraph, which is it's a group of angels, the burning ones.
Right.
I like to pull on myth a lot for my inspiration. Sometimes I'll have like a whole like genie motif, just sort of like the Afrit, which is what do they call them? The jinn have the smokeless flame, I believe. Mine smokes, so it's not the authentic stuff. But I like to play up that sort of thing. I'm trying to put together a routine that is around the sort of the Prometheus story, where he steals fire for
Right.
humans, and then his punishment. I try to tell a story through my art, fire has a very similar draw for me as the vampire things, like like I was saying earlier, fear and conquering fear. It's only you're only afraid of it when you don't know, when you're ignorant of it. When you touch it at first, you realize it's hot, and then I learned to control it. It's about knowledge. It's about overcoming nature's obstacles. I know a lot of people go into like the goth scene or the vampire scene, not because they seek evil or anything like that. It's because they acknowledge darkness, and they want to see they want to overcome it. They see this world that we live in, and that there are many bad things that happen, and they some of the most caring people I've ever met are in the goth underground scene. Things like that. Very emotional, empathic people.
You hit the nail on the head about empathic. Gosh, as I've been known to say, woo, synapses are firing off here. To go back to the whole Promethean thing,
Yes.
when you're discussing this,
Mhm.
it made me think of someone like Edward Snowden.
Yes.
I mean, I think if people are prone to think that myths hold no currency and hold no value in today, well, you might want to go to your Cineplex and see every comic book story is our modern mythology. But in addition to that, the idea of stealing something, which in this case could be knowledge or information, and then presenting it, which is pretty Promethean.
That is an amusing analogy.
think
Edward
about
Snowden is as Prometheus.
Yeah, and the tremendous price that is paid for such actions.
He had a very similar job in the NSA as to what I had in the Air Force. I saw a lot of the
That's
same stuff as he did. Actually, I never met the man. He worked in a lot of the same places that a lot of my friends worked, because he's
Yeah.
he was here,
Right.
on Oahu. And I actually knew his girlfriend,
Oh wow.
Lindsay
small
Mills.
world.
The circus groups that I was talking about
Yeah.
earlier. She was a dancer there, and unfortunately, when that first went down, he had to get out of the country.
Right.
So he was gone, but unfortunately, she had no idea what was going on. So a lot of the press went after her, which was very unfortunate.
Yeah, I mean,
and
talk about collateral
she had to get out of
damage.
here. It's unfortunate because she's a sweet and very talented
Yeah.
performer. So, and she didn't do anything.
I know, and I think it brings up to light something really interesting is
Mhm.
this association. People think guilt by association,
Mhm.
and we make all these presumptions that if we spend time with somebody or we have coffee with them, or heaven forbid, if you're married to them, that we're going to know a lot of things about people.
Right.
But I think it's always important to remember that everyone has their own internal dialogue. They have they're the lead of their own movie. There's so much that we don't know about another person, even if we were to spend every waking moment. So, I mean, how productive can it be grilling somebody just because they were in a relationship when they didn't even know what was going on?
Right. Yeah. I mean, they couldn't find her, so they asked me about it. I mean, there were some journalists that came down and started asking me about her and about Edward Snowden, and I was like,
Well, there's a witch hunt.
yeah. I mean, I told him what I could. I was like, she performs. I saw her in the park, and he worked at similar places as me. No, he doesn't eat fire, as far as I know. I don't know, but they actually asked me that, so I was like, so.
You mentioned also about the empathic qualities within the Gothic community, and I think that there's a natural inclination where it's easy to say people who've been misunderstood, they come together. But then if you start looking at it on a much bigger scope, isn't everybody at some point in their life misunderstood? And I think that that's
absolutely.
something that's really essential, not to have a pity party or not to have a pissing contest, as I've been known to say, who suffered the most emotional war wounds. But if we get right down to the heart of it, the core of the human experiences, the chances for us to be misunderstood are great and daily, and that just happens. Any two people who get together, you're bound to have misunderstandings or
Everyone
differences
is,
of opinions or things like that. And so it's funny how it's like, oh, well, these are the people who are misunderstood and they just all hang out together. And I just said that. But it's like, aren't we all misunderstood?
Right, they're
So,
acknowledging it.
yeah.
Everyone else ignore it. Well, not everyone else, but for the
There's a tendency.
culturally,
Yeah.
there's a tendency to ignore our misunderstandings and just pretend everything's fine, you know. But I think acknowledging it is very important. Making change in our community, you know. I mean, there's so many things going wrong with the world today. So.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Today, after I read the newspaper, yes,
Mhm.
I still read that old-fashioned
Mhm.
thing called the newspaper, 3-day. I actually just, I felt crestfallen. I mean, I
Mhm.
used fingers and I counted, and I was like, wow, I've come across at least a minimum of 10 things in the news that were just utterly, completely depressing.
Yes.
To no end. And I
Mhm.
thought, well, that's where you've got to reach out with community, and you can look at it and say, well, I'm depressed, or, well, what can I do to, in my small way, make a contribution? And that's where I think something as wonderful as putting on a costume and then working in your collaborative projects, doing these photo shoots, seeing them come to the newsfeed
Yes.
and Facebook, or going to the club and watching people do their thing with fire.
Mhm.
You know, a jaded individual might be inclined to say that that's, you know, of no value, but I am here to assert that it's of great value. You
Oh,
know?
absolutely. I mean,
it helps.
even if it's just for entertainment.
Yeah.
I mean, that people need entertainment. Everyone needs entertainment. So do
They
what you
do.
love. You know, do what you find fascinating. Do what inspires you to be a productive and a healthy person. You know, it's everyone's got something they're passionate about. I mean,
This is true. It might even be your OCD. Who knows?
Yeah.
You know, divinity and toilet cleaning. It is possible. That's
it could
what
be.
I hear.
Yeah.
Hey,
Yeah.
whatever
If that's what
floats
you're
your boat.
exactly. If you're into that. Yeah.
So, in terms of being able to follow you or see you or be inspired, do you have some things up and coming that we can come check out, or tell us
Yes.
about a website, or how can we get in contact with you? Blah blah.
I have
blah.
2 things I want to talk about. First,
Okay.
Pretty Peacock Productions is
Miss
sponsoring.
Lola.
Yes, Lola
Yeah.
Love she does regular Wonder shows.
Yes.
Once a month, I believe. The next one is on the 19th September. I believe doors open at 9. Don't quote me on that. But I will be performing with the ensemble there. They have burlesque. They have jugglers, they have dancers, they have me, they have others. I'm not entirely sure everyone on the lineup, but there's tons of people there. I highly recommend going.
I recommend it. Guilty. I did it earlier this year, and you know what? That room really holds a lot of love. I mean, that sounds
Absolutely.
sounds kind of like Mystic Crystal and corny, but the crowd that assembles for that production in particular, there is a tremendous amount of aloha in that room. It's a very supportive crowd, and there's no guarantee. You can go to some places, and I wouldn't necessarily say it's hostile, but maybe they're just too concerned about, you know, having a beer, and they don't even care. And this is a completely different experience
Right.
than that. They're very engaged, very involved, very supportive. So, hey, it's a good thing.
Everywhere has its own feel, and that place does feel very, very aloha.
Yeah, indeed. Okay, so you've got that coming up this month,
Yes.
in September.
In September, coming up real soon. What is it, 2 weeks? Something like that.
Yeah.
I don't know when you're watching this. It might have already passed. Sorry.
I think it might be next week.
Next
the
week?
show.
The 19th?
Yeah,
Was today the 5th?
today's 5th. Oh, so it's 2 weeks from now.
2 weeks, yes, 2 weeks.
Yeah, we'll put a link for it on the Facebook page. Alrighty. And then what else?
The other thing, I have a new project coming up, which is actually a large national project that I'm just trying to jump on. This isn't my project, this is everyone's project, really. It's called Wolfpack. It's, okay, this is gonna get slightly complicated. Bear with me. Has nothing to do with fire entertainment. This has to do with the Republic of the United States. Right now, there's things called PACs, which allow people to put unlimited money to a nonprofit that can go to any political action.
We can
So-
thank the Supreme Court for that.
Exactly.
Not,
Yes.
thank you, not.
Yeah. Sorry if the topic's getting a little boring, but this is very important. And I want to get Hawaii as one of the states trying to ratify an amendment, which would be the 28th Amendment to the Constitution of the United States, to ban money from politics in that way. Yeah.
That's fantastic. Ooh, we're going to have you on again to discuss
Oh, please,
that
yes.
and the advancement of that.
There's a lot to say about that, so I appreciate that. Yes.
Oh, look, third time's a charm. David Tveraas. I was thinking air. It's
Yes,
been awesome
perfect.
having you on the show. Can your fans follow you? Is there a site or a place, a number, a hotline?
I'm on Facebook. Please try to find me on Facebook. This show's on Facebook too.
It is, so we'll put a link to your site.
Yes, that'll work.
Okay.
That'll work. And I'll also pitch more on that political
Great.
stuff.
Thank you so much for joining us today. It was a thrill. You're a very complex person, which I appreciate immensely.
I appreciate your complexity as well.
We'll have you on the show again. This is The Art of Life. We're celebrating 1 year. We have another fabulous guest next week. Who? I'm not going to reveal. You have to stay tuned and watch. Hope to see you soon. Have a wonderful weekend. Keeping it Pono.